All right, so if you missed today's notes, we talked about classifying polynomials. So what this looks like. What exactly is a polynomial? This is going to look really confusing, okay? But don't worry, I'm going to go in more detail later. It looks something like this, where you have a number. You have a number. You're going to put a sub 1 on it. And then it's multiplied by a variable. We're going to put an n on that. And then it's a bunch of these added together. So we have some other number, so a sub 2, times x, and now the exponent is going to be 1 less than the first one, so n minus 1. And then the next one would be a sub 3 times x, n minus 2, and it would just keep going, okay? Until at some point, you're going to have no more x's, and you're just going to have a constant, because you'll eventually stop being able to subtract the exponents, okay? So what does this look like? Let's talk about a couple things in here. A constant is a number in an expression or equation which is not multiplied by a variable. So in this instance, the constant term is at the very end of this equation. It says blank is determined by the highest exponent of, I wish that just said equation. So it's the degree is determined by the highest exponent of all of the terms. The blank blank is a coefficient of the term with the highest degree in a polynomial expression. So this is specifically the leading coefficient. Blank blank of a polynomial is when the terms are ordered such that, so standard form of a polynomial is when the terms are ordered such that they are in alphabetical order, so x's would come first, then y's, then z's if you have multiple variables, with the highest degree, so the highest degree first, and then they progress from highest to lowest, with the constant term being the last term. So let's talk about all these things. We've already described the constant. This is the last term. The leading coefficient is this number that's on the largest exponent. So this is the leading coefficient. This n right here, this would be the highest degree, or just the degree of the polynomial. And then written like this would be decreasing order in size of exponent. This would be standard form. Okay. So then let's talk about some of these things. This first polynomial right here, this is just one singular term. So when we have one singular term, we call this a monomial. Mono standing for one. The leading coefficient in this term, look back at our leading coefficient, is a coefficient of the term with the highest degree. Well, there is no term with a degree in this expression, so there is no leading coefficient. Again, because there's no degree, this would be a degree of 0. These terms are just called constant terms when there's just a degree of 0. So the classification is the degree plus the number of terms. So the degree is a constant term. And then it's a monomial. So we would call this a constant monomial. Next, again, we only have one term. So this is, again, called a monomial. The leading coefficient in this case is going to be this -3 because it's the term with the highest degree in the polynomial expression, right? So the highest degree here is this x. It's got a -3 on it, so -3 is the leading coefficient. When we're talking about the degree of this function, you need to say, what is the degree on x? Well, think about it this way. If we had 3 and we raised it to the first power, what would we get? We would just get out 3. So technically, this is x raised to the first power right here. So the degree would be 1. When you have a degree of 1, that's called a linear function. So the classification here is a linear monomial. And we've talked about linear functions. Those are our functions y equals mx plus b. That's a linear function. All right. Next up, we have two terms. So plus signs or minus signs connect terms. So this -6 is a term, 1/2 x squared is a term. There's two terms, so we would call that a binomial. If we wanted to write it in standard form, remember, the highest degree has to come first. The -6 has no degree with it. 1/2 x squared has x squared on it. So that 1/2 x squared is going to come first. And then you would say -6 to write that in standard form. This also lets us know that the leading coefficient right here is 1/2, because the leading coefficient is the coefficient on the largest, on the variable with the largest exponent. Okay, which in standard form is always that first variable. That degree specifically this time is 2, right? Because the highest degree right here is 2. What we call these ones we call them quadratics. So classification, degree plus the number of terms. So this is a quadratic binomial. All right, next up. Again, we have another binomial. We know that because there's two terms separated by a minus sign here. If we wanted to write this in standard form, x cubed would have to come first. So that's specifically negative x cubed. And then it's a positive x squared. So we put plus x squared. Leading coefficient is that number on x cubed. So that's -1. The highest degree in this one is 3, which that would be called a cubic. So this is a cubic binomial. Weird that just switched like that. Okay, next up, we have three terms. 3 terms is called trinomial, just like a bike, tricycle. Binomial, bicycle. So trinomial, 3 terms. If we're going to go in standard form, we need the 5x to the 4th first. That's the biggest power. And then plus 10 x squared is the second largest power. And then minus 15. Those are our 3 terms. Makes 5 the leading coefficient. The highest degree would be 4. This is called a quartic. So this would be a quartic trinomial. And then last but not least down here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 terms, right? So this one, we actually don't have a specific opener for it. It's called a polynomial, which is what we've been talking about all day today. Polynomial just means that there's multiple terms. Poly standing for multiple. So we have x to the 5th plus 2x cubed minus 8x squared plus x minus 4. Highest degree up front. Its leading coefficient is 1, right? If there's no number here, it's technically just a 1. And this is 5th degree. So this name doesn't have a special name. We just call it 5th degree in Algebra 1. So this is a 5th degree polynomial. Alrighty. So this last part says try this. Write a quadratic binomial with a leading coefficient of -3. Quadratic means that the highest degree is 2. Binomial means that there's 2 terms. And then the leading coefficient is -3. So we have a -3. Highest degree is 2, so we have x squared. And then there's only one more term because we need 2 terms. So we just say plus 1. Or whatever you want. You could say plus 2. You could say plus 3x. You could say minus 4. Infinite possibilities for what this second term looks like. But this first term is very locked in because the degree and the leading coefficient have to match. All right, that's the notes for today. If you have any questions, message me on Canvas. Hope you guys have a great day.